Welcome back to the Scale the Chaos podcast, where we help you transform organizational dysfunction into scalable systems for success. I'm your host, Rhonda Lea, here to guide you through the noise and bring clarity to your business challenges. In our last episode, we began an enlightening conversation with today's guest. If you missed part one, be sure to go back and listen to our previous podcast episode for valuable insights. Today, we're diving into part two of our discussion, so let's continue the journey of scaling the chaos together. Today, my guest is Joe Devon, a seasoned tech entrepreneur, public speaker. Today, we're diving into one of the hottest topics in the business world: how artificial intelligence can help reduce chaos and dysfunction in organizations. Welcome to the show, Joe. I appreciate you being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Do you have any good examples of how AI was poorly implemented?
Most of the uses are improperly done
Uh-huh.
because you can't rely on the LLMs today. Most people are interested in the LLM technology, but those hallucinations that happen mean that you need a human in the loop. And
Yes.
so whatever you build, most of what you build should have a human in the loop.
Yes.
And another thing that happens all the time is corporations say, do not put your data in
Mhm.
ChatGPT or any of
Mhm.
the, I
Mhm.
guarantee you they have every
Yeah.
company's data. I mean, it's all over
Yeah.
the place. There's probably a lot of training on that data.
Yeah, I've worked with and for a couple of healthcare companies, and obviously there's PHI, and they're like, do not put anything in here. But the scary thing is that nobody's watching over their shoulder. You're just relying on their honesty of not putting information in. And what are the chances of that?
Absolutely. But the whole privacy thing is marketing anyway. I remember when my dad got cancer and we needed the doctor's help, we had the scans on the DVD. They had no clue how to use a DVD. So they said, can you help? I went in behind the counter, showed them how to
Yeah.
use the DVD and had access to all of their records. That is a huge HIPAA violation.
Right.
That's rampant
Yeah.
everywhere. I have a lot of friends in healthcare. I didn't even know it at the time, but I've come to learn a lot more about
Yeah.
HIPAA.
There's only so much that you can do for sure. Let's talk about some of the sustainable competitive advantages. I think that's really where a lot of people have a lot of question is, okay, we might be a little fearful of what it can do, but if you can really give us some good competitive advantage of using AI, then they might be more inclined to adopt it.
I just use it automatically in everything I do. It is a huge competitive advantage. You can customize everything. Let's say you send out flyers to potential customers. You can customize it for every single customer of
Yeah.
yours, and they receive it. And you can make like a logo for every customer. You print out that logo, you say, Dear XYZ, and boom, that marketing is a whole other level.
I've seen the videos where you can have somebody holding a whiteboard and it looks like they're talking. They even change the image to be that person's name. It's not just
Yeah.
mail merge.
A mail merge, except that it can use intelligence to figure out what to put there.
Exactly. I have loved the technology that allows to create a video avatar. It really cut down on video productivity and production. My son, though, who's a senior in high school, saw one of my videos and he was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. This is what the world is coming to, which kind of surprised me because the young people are the ones that want all the technology. Some of it may have been about the fact that he's seen this fake avatar of his mom and it seemed weird. That probably was more. The amount of time that has cut down on video productivity is enormous. And it's not a super inexpensive tool, but compared to what it would cost to produce, who would have thought 5 years ago that I could read a script for 30 seconds and then it has this avatar, and all I have to do is type in the script, and now voila, here I am on a video saying whatever the script is. That's just crazy to me. I actually get kind of excited thinking about all the possibilities.
This is a place where you do have to fear what's coming with AI. And
Uh-huh.
we're both NSA, National Speakers Association members. As it gets better quality to create video avatars that look like human beings, and it can be
Uh-huh.
all kind of people, all of social media, like 90%, you could
Yeah.
just say, I want you to make money. You give an agent a gold bank account and you say, create 1 million avatars, have all of these creators compete with each other, create content, and then train the model on the ones that make the most money, and then create another million of those. So if you're a content creator, that's what you're going to be competing with. My thesis is that in real life, IRL is going to be the hot commodity in the
Yes.
future. Those of us that are doing public speaking can prove that this is us, come to the event, speak
Get
to
on
us,
this on
and
the
build a
stage live.
reputation, right?
Yes.
And so it's like those that don't want AI slop, which is what they call this kind of,
Yeah.
mass generated crap, will look to in real life events and
Yeah.
real speakers.
That's very valid. And the reason I say that is because I've heard recently that there's been this shift to a preference for physical mail. Remember back in the day before internet and email? 'Cause okay, first of all, I have to say I remember was I was in college and they were introducing this email concept. I had to go to the computer lab and I'm like, who's gonna use email? Because I gotta go all the way to the computer lab just to check it when I could just the go to the
Yeah.
post office and pick up my mail. Still remember that, right? And
Yeah.
so now then it evolved to, "Oh, no, email marketing is the way," and now everybody's so bombarded with their email marketing in their email that now it's said that actually getting physical mail is so rare that if you do choose to send physical mail, you're one of the few. So it's actually going to stand out. It's kind of funny how we've come full circle. And I think we're going to do the same thing with this whole authenticity and AI as well.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. You did remind me of a story. I remember when email was first coming out, and there was a cartoonist, Mark Evanier, whose cartoons were good, but he was really great at telling Hollywood stories because he
Hmm.
was a writer for Johnny Carson and a bunch of other shows. He told Hollywood stories and had MCI mail. And me and my brother wrote him, like, it was super early days. And the very first email letter to the editor was published in that cartoon that my brother sent to Mark Evanier. So that's how old we are.
You know, thank you for that reminder.
I'm just saying, me and
Well,
my brother.
it's so amazing to see the shift that has happened in our lifetime. But then when you think about people who are 30, 40 years older than us and the shift they've seen, that's pretty
uh,
remarkable too. Then when you take that a step further and think about what kind of shift children in their 20s are going to see, it'll be amazing to see what happens in the next 20 to 25 years because it'll be even faster in the future.
the big shift is going to come when humanoid robots are really ubiquitous. There's something to be gained by doing hard work, hard physical labor, by knowing how to do things. And I'm super technologist. I know the negatives because I don't know how to do
Yeah.
um, the handyman. Like, I'm not handy. In my 50s, I regret that. So what happens when you have robots in your house that will go to the grocery store, get your groceries, do
Yes.
your dishes, clean your bathroom? We won't know how to do anything, and we will be missing some of that struggle.
We'll all be like high schoolers coming out to college learning how You're absolutely true because I've even noticed in the younger generation because my children are in that generation, even a little bit of common social cues that they miss because they spend so much time in the screen. So I can only imagine that becoming that much more worse. I was working for a company and had younger people in my team. They told me that my communication felt aggressive when I used punctuation. I mentioned this to my daughter, kind of like, "Can you believe that? This is ridiculous." And she says, "Well, actually, yeah, mom. Anytime you send me a text and you use punctuation, I think I'm in trouble." I'm like, "What?" So this whole time because I'm using proper grammar, I actually capitalize the first word in the sentence and I use punctuation and proper spelling. It comes across as aggressive. Just like,
Yeah,
wow.
when I first read that in marketing, in the social media marketing, that when there's spelling mistakes, the posts do better because it seems more human.
Oh,
And when a brand makes a spelling mistake, you're like, that's not professional. But no,
yeah.
it actually does better.
And it's not only is it not professional, it's like they're not credible. They clearly don't know what they're doing. So it is interesting to see this generational shift, which I think was why it surprised me so much when my son was like, ew, yuck, I can't believe you're using AI to create these videos. And I was like, you do it all the time. You just don't want me to do it.
True.
You mentioned things are going to really change when these robots, humanoids, or whatever you called them.
Humanoid plus other robots, but where we have
How
an environment built for humans. When you have a humanoid robot, it can do that variety of tasks that we do.
in place of us? That's
Yeah.
when we really should be worried that our jobs could be replaced. How near in the future do you?
And I have friends in robotics, so I have an idea. My robotics friends that don't know AI are feeling like this is very far off. There's a ton of
Okay.
work to do. And then I start sending them some of the videos of people working on AI and the
Uh-huh.
AI robotics. And they're like, oh my God, this is incredible. But they're still cherry picked where they'll have a robot do laundry and they'll have 2,000 attempts. And then on the 2001st attempt, it does it perfectly. And then they're going to show that video. There's a theory out there by Ray Kurzweil, who wrote The Singularity is Near, and he has predicted the rise of AI. He has been remarkably accurate. He said that what we don't realize is there's exponential growth. This is what ChatGPT looked like this year. This is
Mhm.
what it'll look like next year. But exponential growth, we just don't have the brains to comprehend how big that exponential growth is.
Yeah.
It's probably at least 5 years away for
Okay.
that humanoid robot. It could be 10 and it could be 20, but with that exponential growth, it'll be like ChatGPT. One day there was nothing or very little that only the researchers know. And then the next day you have a product that works and you're
Yes.
like, oh my God. So it'll be like a bomb dropping.
Yeah, it'll be the robot heard round the world, right? But back in the '80s, they were predicting by now we would already have time travels.
Yeah. I don't know about the time travel.
So what can organizations do to prep for these AI developments? Are there things that we can start doing now to prepare ourselves for that?
I mean, try everything, pay for like the amount of value that you get. I personally pay $20 for ChatGPT,
Uh-huh.
$20 for Anthropic. I spoke at an event and got a free Perplexity Pro, but I had to spend 20 for that.
Yeah.
I spend like $40, $50 for something called Cursor. Like it feels expensive, but it's really not for the value that it's providing.
Yes.
One thing that if you're doing anything tech related, and most businesses somehow have an angle that's tech related, there's a lot of apps like Vercel, Lovable Tech, and Cursor that allow you to prompt an AI to write code for you, little applications.
Uh-huh.
I would definitely spend a lot of time on that if you need websites or stuff like
Yeah.
that. It keeps getting better every
Uh-huh.
month, but as soon as that's really good, then you're just going to need to speak and it will create an application.
Well, and the way that I see it is there's going to come a time when AI is forced upon you, whether you want to use it or not. We're at a point where several years ago, it was rare that people had a website. Now everybody has a website and you can't do business without a website. I
Yeah.
feel like AI is eventually going to get to that point. And if you wait
It's
until
already
that point,
there.
huh? It's already,
As we said earlier, it's just baked into a lot of
yeah. Well, yes and no, because I still know of a lot of people who are like, what is this chat GPT? If you wait until the point where you have no choice but to start implementing and using AI, otherwise you will become extinct. If you wait until that point to start actually learning how to use it and learning how to implement it, that gap is huge. Talk about a huge industry disruptor. You have to react to disruptions, otherwise you go by the wayside. And this is no different than any other industry disruptor. You have to be able to pivot and adapt. So you're
it's
gonna,
hard to give a million examples because every business is different and everybody uses technology differently. But for almost everything you're using your computer for, AI will make it better.
and the way to use it is in creative, authentic, original ways, not the same way everybody else is using it. I think that your best safety net from being replaced by AI is picking up certain skills to work effectively alongside. What are the best skills for employees to start picking up?
What's interesting is you have all these AI tools
Uh-huh.
and most people don't read the instructions. They don't read the documentation. You want to be on another level. Start with the documentation, read every single page. And anytime there's an update to the application,
Mhm.
read the notes on what was updated. And then you're going to be better than most people are at using AI.
Are they even teaching AI in college yet?
I don't know, but that's not where I would go. There's
Because
YouTube
you could
videos for everything. I
yeah,
would just go on
I
YouTube.
know. Don't get me started on my beef with college about having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an education that you could just get off the internet.
There was a study at Harvard, and there might have been two, where they gave students, there was one like magnet school where they used AI to help teach them. They
Uh-huh.
did a semester of learning in 2 weeks.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and then Harvard did some kind of study where the students, I don't remember if it was the students using teachers to help guide them on what they were
Uh-huh.
learning through AI, but the learning itself was with AI. And they learned way
Yeah.
better with AI than with the teachers. So
Well, it's definitely disrupting the education system. What I was alluding to is just like you would go learn any other new skill, you would do the same thing with AI. Part of that is reading the instructions, watching videos. You still have to have that discernment about what is true and what is not, what's factual and that kind of thing. Going out and learning everything that you can about it is probably, in my opinion, to prepare for the future is just to use everything that is out there and learn how to use it.
absolutely.
So, are there any security considerations or concerns that you've come across related to AI other
Oh
than
yeah.
the PHI that we discussed earlier?
Oh yeah. Lots of concerns. The OpenAI new product today that they announced, they claim that they fixed the prompt injection.
Okay.
They did what's called red teaming, which is when you try to trick the AI in their internal training.
Okay.
So they got almost everything. They figured out how to get it to work well. But what happens is once you have browsing on the internet, people have created things like embedding messages inside images that the human cannot detect, but that is detectable for the AI. For
Oh.
example, code is all zeros and ones.
Uh-huh.
Machine code is all zeros and ones. So you can have an image with those zeros and ones, which mean nothing to you,
Yeah.
but that could mean something. And it could be like, okay, send an email. There have been researchers, security researchers that have created these prompt injections where it can give your personal information out and say, okay, send an email with your password and credit card. They
And
can
nobody
steal from
would
you.
yeah, nobody would know that it's there. I could see how that's a little bit frightening. A
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit.
We're just starting. There's
Yeah.
still people writing insecure code with old databases. I'm shocked because we have decades where we know how to do this right. I
Yeah.
still see people building database applications wrong. But with AI, there's new techniques, and it's going to take a while before that security stuff is figured out.
So is there anything that organizations or even individuals can do to protect themselves from any of that? I'm assuming not using AI is not a way to protect ourselves, right?
Don't give it your credit card information. Don't give it control of your email.
Don't type your credit card information into ChatGPT. Other than the obvious, is security really becoming a necessity? If they don't already exist, maybe they do.
I think that it's important. And I always thought that security would do better than it has as a business. You may remember the Sony hack where
Uh-huh.
Amy, what her name, I forget her last name, but the president of Sony, all of her emails were leaked. You can go online and see all of her emails where she talks about the different actors and actresses, and all that personal stuff is there.
Yeah.
And what used to happen is the corporations would do their security by lawyering up. So all of the contracts would say the liability goes on to the person building the application. But when you have a hack of all of your emails, yes, you can try and put the liability on a third party, but as you know, all of your personal stuff is out there.
Yeah.
There's no liability there. It could have taken down Sony. So I thought after that happened that security companies would just dominate. So in one of our sessions at the NSA, the National Speakers Association, our former president, Mark Stiving, who is an expert on value, was discussing how you should sell or what's successful when you sell. And there are three things that you can sell. One item you can sell is something that will help sell more. The other is selling them something that will reduce their cost to produce whatever they're doing. And then the third by far is insurance. or risk avoidance. And
Mhm.
so nobody wants to spend money on insurance because you don't get any real value out of it other than if something bad happens. So it's a lot harder to sell. And for that reason, security companies don't do as well, even though it is a massive need in AI to create security measures. The money isn't in there as much as you would expect. I don't think it will do as well. I never realized that until I heard Mark give that talk.
It makes a lot of sense that they want something that's gonna make them money.
Nobody wants to get hacked, but you don't think
Yeah.
about it. And
Well,
so
yeah, and there's a reason why there are laws that we have to have car insurance. Because how many people would have car insurance if we weren't legally required to have it? And if our mortgage companies didn't require us to have homeowners insurance, how many people would have homeowners insurance? Insurance feels useless until you need it, and you always hope that you never need it. But the other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that once you put information in to AI, we lose complete control over it because there's so many unknowns. We don't know what happens to that information. And when we don't know what happens to that information, that obviously means we have no control over it.
there are ways to get around that, to
Okay.
use local models,
Okay.
but that requires some technical expertise.
Uh-huh.
But you can definitely download local models. There's an open source Chinese model that just beat out Meta was doing these open source models that was very expensive for them to do. And these Chinese model came out that cost them, I think, $5 million to put out. It's open source and it performs really well. You can download it to certain Macs, which is insane because these are usually very computationally heavy and require expensive GPUs.
Are we really trusting a Chinese
Uh,
model?
if you set it up locally and make sure that it can't put that information out, but there are other
Yeah.
models
Oh,
as well.
okay.
So you don't
Okay.
have to just use the
Don't
Chinese. I was
just,
just mentioning that one because it got to be really cheap. But if you're
uh-huh.
offline, there's something called the Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
If I have one here, the Raspberry Pi is like a tiny little computer, and here, this is an Arduino. So you've got these little computers, and if you don't connect it to the internet, you can set up a GPT on there and have conversations locally.
Oh,
Um,
I wasn't even aware of that.
I just saw today that somebody put it on a Raspberry Pi. This is not very easy to
A
do
news thing, because
because
I'm
it's
like, am I living in the dark? I did.
no, this is
Okay.
bleeding edge
Mm.
tech. But
Uh,
my point is, somebody just did it. That means 6 months, a year, or whatever. It's going to,
the other question I've heard a lot of people say is when you put in a prompt and you get something back from AI, who owns that information? Do you own that information? Do you get to claim that as your own?
so you have to read the contract. There's terms, there are agreements inside that you can look up,
Okay. So
and it will
like
tell you,
ChatGPT and Claude and all of those have different agreements?
yeah. And
Okay.
I don't remember offhand what they are. If you don't pay, it will train on your data. Supposedly, it won't look at your personal stuff, but I wouldn't trust it. If you're paying for it, I think they keep the data for 30 days just in case, and then they supposedly drop it. I wouldn't trust that either. But the large corporations have lawyers that negotiate those terms. If your data gets out there, you can sue the hell out of the AI company.
So what would you say is the one thing that you wish every organization understood about AI?
They've got to play with it because if they don't play with it, they could get disrupted tomorrow. You need to be careful because everything gets disrupted so quickly. So you can spend a lot of money on something and then the next day, everything that you built is useless.
Yeah.
You've got to have experiments going at the very least. And on an individual basis, you should definitely be using GPTs in your day to day activity.
And learning how to incorporate it daily. You also said everything changes so quickly, but I would also add unpredictably. Not only do we not know how fast it's going to change, but we don't know exactly in every way that it's going to change. We might have some ideas of, okay, this is in the pipelines and this is coming up. Is it really going to be successfully implemented or is it going to be adopted? Is somebody else going to come up with another technology that's better? So there's just really no way to
AI
actually know.
researchers have no clue themselves.
Yeah.
I mentioned the Chinese model because today there's a website called teamblind.com where people validate that there's an email address from that organization. There was a
Uh-huh.
leak from Meta where they were freaked out about these Chinese models because they're so inexpensive and better than their models. I
Yes.
don't know if it's true, but it makes sense.
Well, and
Um,
I would be weary of anything from China that's cheaper. I feel like they're thinking, "Oh, well." We'll put this
but
out
it's
there. It's
better.
cheaper. I know,
Yeah.
cheaper and better, but at what expense? Are you selling your soul to the devil? I don't
No, no,
know.
I'm not trying to say that you should
Yeah.
use Chinese models. All I'm
Uh,
saying is it's taking everybody by complete surprise. The reason that the Chinese models are doing so well is that the government has not allowed them to use GPUs anymore. So they're not allowed to buy the GPUs, which is a certain kind of processor that NVIDIA has that are made for AI, very
uh-huh.
expensive. Because they didn't have access to it anymore, they tried to create other techniques and beat the people that are using the GPUs.
Oh,
And
okay.
so
Oh,
all the AI researchers are like, oh my God, wow. So the meta people who spent all this money, they're now reverse engineering the Chinese models, and they're going to try to use those techniques in their next
and
version.
yeah.
But that's how uncertain everything is because it changes so quickly.
Yeah, because you never know while you're building, somebody else could be building something better, and you would never know it till it was implemented or introduced.
And I'm sorry, there is so much uncertainty that it's hard to
Yeah.
go in and say, do this or do that. I feel it myself because I don't want to invest too much in one activity that could be
Yes.
obsolete tomorrow.
I feel
So
the same way.
I want to get back to your previous question and add a little more
Okay.
about what businesses should do.
Okay.
You should be creating a knowledge base where
Uh-huh.
you upload your PDFs and documents. You want to make sure that you check that they're not training on that data, but then upload those documents and then you can interact with your own content. So that's
Mhm.
one important activity that you can do that can really help you if you want to ask a financial question of all your books, and your
Yeah.
books are in one of those project areas of the GPTs, you can get answers very quickly. When you're prompting an AI, you need to give it context, and you want to give it a persona where you say, you are a marketing expert. You are
Mhm.
a dry cleaning expert. You're an automotive expert,
Or you're my
anything in your
editor.
business. So essentially, if you're a solopreneur or you have 5 employees, and if you had the money, you would have had 30 employees.
Mhm.
Just create personas within these GPTs that have different expertise. When you prompt it with that expertise, you can have a conversation. Some people create a huge prompt where they'll say, okay, Martha is the marketing expert. Rhonda is the AI expert. Joe is the car expert. And you say, all of you, I want to create this new product. Can all of you have a conversation about the pros and cons of this idea I have? And then you get the opinions of a multitude of experts. It's like you have 30 employees you didn't have before, and they'll give you insights that you couldn't get um, cheaply any other way.
That's fascinating. I've never thought of it in that way. As my editor, what would you say? You're not like, okay, have a conversation with yourself
Yeah.
on these 3 or 4 different personas. That's fascinating. I'm gonna have to play with that and see what I can come up with. Thank you so much, Joe. This was a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation about what it's doing for organizations and how it can help them scale their chaos and bring order to their dysfunction. If people wanna find you, Joe, tell us what your website is.
Ally audits, which is if you're trying to make your website accessible
Okay.
to people with disabilities. So that's A11Y audits, AUDITS.com.
Okay.
And then my username on all socials is Joe Devon, JoeDevon.
Okay.
And then it's a little more complicated to give the podcast, but if you can put that in the show notes, that would be great. And you can hear some of the really cool products that are out there for people with disabilities that use AI.
We will put the link to your podcast in our podcast description, as well as links to your website so people can find you on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I had a lot of fun.
That wraps up this episode of Scale the Chaos podcast and our conversation with today's guest. A big thank you goes out to my guests for sharing their expertise and actionable insights. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Your support helps us bring more conversations like this to business leaders like you. To find out more on how you can scale your chaos, you could go to my website at www.scalethechaos.com or connect with me, Rhonda Lea, that's Lee spelled Lea, on LinkedIn. Join us next time as we continue to tackle the challenges of organizational dysfunction and help you transform chaos into scalable systems. Until then, stay focused, stay inspired, and let's scale the chaos together.